Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. A few things to look at today, but I'm going to do it in bits because I want to get on with my watering before the heat builds up. Because I'm not comfortable out here with the kit on. I'd rather have it nice and quiet while I'm watering. So I need to crack on. So I'm going to do this in bits. I did say we had some new stuff today. This Dracula is nearly open, but not quite. So you didn't make it, did you? But you did try. But I think we can see something along the lines of what we're going to be getting if it does open properly, as well as the size. First time bloomer for me, that one, and I've got a feeling it's actually not a Dracula, it's a Dracuvalia. It is, and it's a letter page that came from Lynn a while back, so it's its first bloom for me. It's also pushing up quite a few new growths, which is nice because the old ones aren't very healthy, but it's coming on. It's going to make it okay. It's still got new ones growing as well. But yeah, not quite open. You didn't make it. And you'll all be pleased to hear that this nice Masdevallia that had the spike with the open bloom and the bud pushing on fell off. Now, I must have knocked that because I don't think it fell off on its own. So we've just got the one now. In theory, we would have had three, but okay, just the one. Now this Restrepia here, which I forget which one it is it Falkenbergii? No, it's Antennifera. This hasn't bloomed for some considerable time. It really objected to being repotted last year and decided not to bloom as a consequence. But it's now doing something I've never seen it do before. Practically everywhere where it's decided to bloom, it's pushed out two at the same time. So they're all in pairs. Now, I've never seen it do that before. So they've all come out in, well, I say all, many have come out in pairs. Some of them have yet to come out. There's an odd one in places. And there's quite a few gone over. So it's picking up. It's, as I said, once it starts coming into bloom, we've still got some new leaves coming out crinkly, but not as many. Some of them are coming out clean now, not as many as we had before. And that's normally a hydration problem. You've got to go careful with stuff. After you've repotted it, and you don't necessarily lose your roots, but your roots aren't settled anymore. They don't hydrate the plant as well. And at that point in time, you start seeing the signs of dehydration. So you chuck more water at it. And what you're doing is effectively drowning the poor thing because it's not using the water because it hasn't got a good root system. Yeah, and that's really what happened with this one. So it lost even more roots. It's starting to recover now, enough to decide to bloom. I don't know how close I can get with this camera on blooms this size. It usually goes blurred as I get quite close, but lovely delicate pattern on these. Beautiful patterning. And lovely alien shape with the antennae as well. So anyway, that one's picked up. Right, I'll be back in a bit. I wanted to show you was the Brassia. The spikes up here now are showing buds. There's we haven't got a colour show yet. So until the sort of buds start turning a whitish colour and show their spots, we're not getting close to opening yet. We are getting close to the roof. I'm keeping my eye on it. If it gets close enough to the roof, it's going to have to come down on the floor. But I'm hoping that my Cymbidium will have gone outside by then. So I'm getting fed up with my feet catching on that anyway. But this is going to be a problem on the floor. It's not so much the space it takes up. It's the fact that when I'm working in here, I'm not necessarily looking at my feet. So I will have to go careful. But this is going to be quite a show as far as blooming is concerned, but I can't twist this round to show you the whole of the base of the plant, but I wanted to show this section as it's at the front. Now, starting from here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new growths, and that's just on that bit of the plant. Just on that bit. There are more around the other side. Now, I was dead pleased last year when I got 5 new growths, because 5 new growths equaled 5 spikes. So what the hell is this going to look like next year? We're going to get 5 spikes here, all very close together, plus whatever's round the rest of the plant. I'll see if I can turn it, but I've got to keep my eye on the spikes as I turn the plant, because there's things they can catch on up near the roof. Like that one's just done. Just ease that under that wire so it catches on plants and all sorts. So right, we've come round a bit now. We've got another one there, so that makes 6, doesn't it? I'm watching my spikes and getting hooked up on plants up in the roof and on racks and all sorts. We've got to go steady here. So that was 6, wasn't it? So that's 7 and that's 8. Don't think there are any more. Don't think there's any coming up in the middle of the plant. So we've got 8 new growths, and quite honestly this didn't get repotted when I brought it home last year, which was whenever Burnham's 70th do was. I can't remember. The summertime last year anyway. And I didn't repot it, so it hasn't been repotted since I got it. I know it'll be in good bark, and chances are the bottom half of the pot will have those polystyrene chips in. I know how Sarah and crew like to pot their big stuff. But this has got all the hallmarks of when it gets repotted becoming 2 plants. It, as we just saw, it naturally splits down the middle. Nothing going on in through here. We've got new growths here and new growth there, and it might even be 2 plants already when I get it out of the pot, possibly even more. I don't think so though. It may well be 2. So it's going to get split into 2. Then I'll have 2 plants that I'll have trouble looking after because of their size. But those 2 plants would enable me to get the 2 pieces in smaller pots rather than this flipping bucket, which is clumsy to say the least. I have a hell of a job watering this because it's so heavy because of its size. As I start pouring water in, it gains weight, and I have a job to water it. Anyway, that was what I wanted to look at, and progress on the spikes is good. Blooms, I would say a week minimum, possibly 10 days. Could be inside a week. Brassias are quick. But I suspect it'll be a week to 10 days, and all spikes will probably start opening at the same point. So they are all going to be out together. That's going to be quite a show. And this is heavily scented. The fragrance on this is powerful. So we're going to have eye-watering when we come out here once this lot opens up. Right, so that's that bit. Now, you know, I'm always saying never give up on a dendrobium. However, some of the other genera that lurk around here, I do give up on. And I had given up on this. The only reason it's still here is because it lives in a place that's not in my way. And it just gets watered with the rest of the mounts, even though it's got no flipping leaves and hardly any roots. This is my Oncidium thing. I'll put a pop up. To all intents and purposes, the back end of the plant rotted. Sorry, that's just habit saying that. The front end of the plant rotted. So the latest growth rotted off, and I had to chop it. You can see the ceremonious chop there at the front in the centre shot now, the black bit. And obviously I expected that damage to losing its latest growth to force a growth farther back, the logical place being the previous pseudobulb. Well, I've just noticed this morning we have got a new growth, but it's not where I expected. It's farther back. It is in fact on a bulb that didn't bloom. It went 1 year without a bloom. I mean, this has only ever progressed 1 bulb per year at a time, slowly but surely. So we do have a new growth. I would suggest at this time of year it's going to make it. You know, that growth's got everything going for it now. Yeah, so we might have to add never give up on an Oncidium, but unfortunately we do have to give up on them, sometimes quite frequently. So that's a bit of good news. I did not want to lose that, partly because of the history of how long that took me to get it and the battle I had with various people at that show to get one of their orchids out of a display, which is well out of order, and the guy could have got in serious trouble. But we did deals, we got it done, and so I didn't want to lose that. So that's a bit of good news. And while we're talking about Brassias, the other Brassia that I got at the same time at Burnham's, the spike on that's pushing up quite nicely. That's not going to have a huge number of blooms on though. 1, 2, 3, probably only 5. It's not a lot, but it does have another new growth over the other side of the plant, which is behind this one. So that's not going to spike for a while, but it will continue the blooms. And also I noticed recently my Shelob Tolkien has a spike on one of its new growths, but only on one. And the other one didn't mature very well at all in the winter. It's a very stunted bulb. This one, however, is still pushing on. So this hasn't even formed a bulb yet, but we've got a spike. So a couple more, a Brassia and a Brassia type to come. My little species Tolumnia, I'm not going to be able to show this very well because the blooms are so tiny, really tiny, plus it won't stay still, no doubt. It's just opened its first bloom. Now if you just have a quick look at, that's roughly normal size for Tolumnia blooms, yeah? I mean there's an assortment here to look at with my hand, and now have a look at the size of this one. They are minute, and there's not going to be many of them because some clumsy clod broke the spike, as you can see. Luckily it branched, oops, boing, and we will have some blooms on the branches, but nowhere near as many as we would have had on a main spike. But we'll still have a few. I mean there's sort of 4 or 5 on this spike, 3 or 4 on this one, so we will have some more to come. And we've got an old friend just returned. Everybody likes this one. This is the Cattleya Little Lemon Drops crossed with Catletonia. Why not? And the colours on this, it's a tiny bloom for a Cattleya. You know, this is not a large bloom by any means, but it's just the colour combination. It's, you know, that's a bright yellow in the lip, and that's a magenta on the end of the lip, and then the sepals are a peachy colour with sort of stripes of a slightly different colour, and then we've got a peachy colour on the 2 petals that heads out from the centre and turns to magenta for the tips. It's a smashing combination of colours, it really is. Pity it isn't bigger. And the thing is, we need to have another look at this, the Laelia purpurata, simply because I haven't got a clue how long these are going to last, so we're going to have to look at this frequently. But, oh, those are gorgeous blooms. Now, something in here has got a hell of a fragrance, and I'm not sure it's apple blossom because that smells of freesias. I know the fragrance on apple blossom, so I can only assume it's that. I'm going to see if I can gently ease that down and get it near my Uta. No, it's not that. I don't detect any fragrance from that, I must admit. Unless it's this thing. The, I've forgotten what it's flipping called now, the Dialalia, the new one. I'm not sure I can squeeze that out through there. Yes, I can, just about. Oh, that's got a lovely fragrance, but it's not strong, so that's not what it is. And the next bloom is opening up, so soon we're going to have a fresh one, because that one's starting to show signs of going over. So we will have a freshly opened one in possibly by tomorrow. And then we'll have a look at it, because obviously a freshly opened one is going to have the best colours. So we'll revisit that tomorrow. And that's about it. It was just to look round at some things today, some things that have developed a bit. And yeah. Oh, that's the fans coming on. That's my signal to get the rest of the kit back on and get out. That just means the temperature's creeping up and it's deciding to try and suck the hot air out and bring some cooler air in. Well, if the big fans were on and the hydrofogger was on, that wouldn't have happened. The spikes on the Odontoglossum naeviem are showing spots now, so not too long and the first spike will be open and the second spike will follow on over there. so that can come up where we can see it once it actually does its thing. Oof! Getting down there's all right, it's getting up again. Right, so I'll leave it at that today. Oh, actually we need to have a look at this as well, because this is going to go very soon, I suspect. 3 nice spikes together on that, and as a cluster of blooms they do look rather nice. So I can get this a bit more to the front. Yeah, it is a good show, but it's short-lived. You know, again, 12 days, you may get 14. Some people get a few. It depends on the temperature. Like, it's warm at the moment, we're having warm days. The warmer it is, you knock days off, literally. Now, if this had bloomed earlier in the year when it was cooler, I'd probably get an extra 3 or 4 days out of it. But with the heat we've got here, you can just see that one is starting to go transparent, which means they're about to go. And when it goes, they will all go very quickly. And yet, sitting right next to it, innocently, the Latoria type. This is a relatively new one as well, and this is, I've forgotten. Eximium crossed with Rhodostictum, I think. I always know it's crossed with Rhodostictum because that's the shape of the blooms. You can see the Rhodostictum in it. But, you know, these blooms have been on it since I got the plant, and they'll probably be on it for another 6 to 8 weeks, could be longer. So, you know, you take your chances with your choices with dendrobiums. Some of them have blooms that last for ages, and the Latorias are the ones that have got the blooms that last the ages that are quite easy to look after. I mean, you could say Cuthbertsonii, the blooms last absolutely ages. They're not that easy to look after though, are they? And they're tiny. Whereas this, you've got something to get hold of, nice decent sized plant, and blooms that last an absolute age, and free flowering. These are not difficult to get to bloom. They bloom on virtually every new growth that matures. Normally the year after they mature, but not necessarily. So there we go then, that's today done, and I've finished my watering now. I'm going to go and have a... Thank you very much for all those who followed my short little video earlier today and headed off to that nest cam in Wales and did the like and possibly subscribed as well. There's been a lot of appreciation, don't get me wrong. And some of the people from there have even come over and had a look at my channel. I wasn't expecting that. But anyway, it's just something we tend to forget. Although we're concentrating on the old orchids, the very fact that there's an interest in the orchids probably means there's a wider interest in our wildlife and plant life in general. You know, so to actually appreciate a nest cam with, you know, a pair of ospreys. Sometimes, you know, you can watch for a long time and absolutely nothing happens. And then other times there's a hive of activity. So it does vary. But for those of you who haven't gone against a live cam like that, that's permanent. So it's a live broadcast that's permanently on. Not like the sort of ones that I do that, you know, I start and then I stop later. These are on permanently unless there's some sort of failure. And you've got controls. It's obviously playing at the time you look at it, but if you use your left arrow, you can scroll back in 5-second chunks, and then the right arrow will scroll forward in 5-second chunks. And if you use the letter J, that scrolls backwards in 10-second chunks, and the letter L scrolls forward in 10-second chunks. And then you've also got, you know, when you get your cursor or finger, if you're on that sort of device, near the bottom of the screen, if the red line isn't already there, the red line appears. And on the right-hand end of that red line is a red circle. You can grab hold of that and drag it back for hours and hours and hours. So if there's a comment that says something interesting happened at a certain time, you can drag it back and have a look. And if you don't hit it quite right, you've got your letter J and your letter L to sort of jump in 10-second jumps. So there's a few controls that might be useful to you if you're going to stick around. So, but thanks for going there in the first place. I mean, last time I looked, we'd gone from just under 600 to over 700 likes. and their subscribers had jumped from, I think it was 5.71, and last time I looked it was 5.76. So we've put some numbers on their sheet basically, so thanks for that, thanks for taking part, and who knows, some of you may find it interesting enough to stay there, yeah? You might even go looking for some more. The other Welsh sites that I'm subscribed to, one of their chicks hatched this morning, so managed to get some good close-ups and everything. So I don't know whether that's the first one to hatch in Wales, but it's certainly the first one in that nest. 2 to go, and the nest on the site that I asked you to go and look at this morning, I think those eggs are due to hatch in about 5 or 6 days time, something like that. So you might want to come back nearer the time. Who knows, you may actually see your first ever egg hatch. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for doing it, appreciated, and appreciated by the site as well. So see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.